Hello, this is Edward Kastenmeier, and I'm an executive editor at the Knopf Doubleday Publishing Group. And I have the distinct pleasure of being Joe's editor. And I wanted to thank you all for joining us. I wanted to thank BNN for hosting this event. And I particularly wanted to thank Aisha and Miwa and Abby, who have helped organize this and are running things behind the scenes for us. Um, I think Joe needs no introduction for most of you, but I will say he's the number one New York Times best-selling author of 18 novels, widely known for the Harry Hola series, and we are here to celebrate the publication of his new standalone novel, The Kingdom. So welcome, Joe. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Edward.
It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to talk with you today. And I think I may be channeling our audience's curiosity and saying, looking at the background behind you, is this where the magic happens? Is this where you write?
Yeah, well, it is nowadays. It is. Before COVID-19, I would go outside to my local coffee shop or something. Actually, this is where I plan to write. I bought a big desk, which is in the background here. It has a big computer. I have my coffee here, my music, and for a long time, it was the only place in the world where I simply could not write. So I had to go outside to my local, like I said, to my local coffee shop and fight for my favorite table. But now everything is it's not closed, but it's you don't go out to write nowadays. So I finally gotten used to working in my office.
Hmm. Finally, after all these years, this is what made it possible, I guess.
Mm.
Do you when do you write? Do you write all day? Do you write early? Do you write late? Do you have a particular pattern, rhythm to your days?
Not really. I don't have like a timetable, but when I started writing, I would write at night. So I would be the typical, like the writer in the myth of the writer drinking and writing late at night, tumbling to bed when the sun rises. I would actually do that for a couple of years, but I realized that it wa- my work improved when I got up in the morning and I used those golden hours, the first
Mm.
3-4 hours of the day to write. So nowadays I try to do the most important part of my writing during the first 3 or 4 hours of the day, and then later on I may write a little bit, but basically I try to to not stay up at night. I did for some reason start writing songs in the middle of the night when I got home from going to a bar or something, and I always I always found out that I can. It was just rubbish, the things I produced at night, but I kept on doing it. I don't know why, but nowadays I sleep at night for the
Right,
most part.
right. Well, that probably makes you more efficient. And do you, I'm curious, because I see the novels fully finished. What is your process? Are you a religious? Uh, do you religiously sort of outline your novels, or do you start with a scene or a character and see how they develop? How do you, how does a book come to you? How is it conceived?
I'm I don't have like a method when it comes to the ideas. It could be anything. Like you said, it could be a character. It could be in case of a crime story with a who's done it story. It could be the idea of a perfect murder. Um, it could even be the title. Like for instance, the Snowman started with the title The Snowman.
Mm.
Um, and but then when I sit down and I start planning the novel, then I will work out the plot and also the characters more or less in detail. I will put in bits and pieces of dialogue just to get to know my characters. So when I finally sit down and I write chapter one, I will probably have a synopsis of let's say 50 pages, 50, 60 pages, something like that. And so by then I will know more or less exactly where we're going with the story. And I mean, writers are different. Myself, I like the feeling of sort of retelling the story when I start writing, and not of creating the story as we go along. So I then again there will be um, changes and hopefully improvements to my written synopsis, and especially the characters. It's a strange thing. They will sometimes not behave the way I plan them to,
Right.
and that is what happens, especially when you start writing the dialogue. That you may be surprised, and that's um, why I now, having learned by experience, that it's good to have them talk a little, just to get more feeling of how they walk and talk.
Hmm. Yeah, and that brings me to a question I've had, which is, by the time I see the book in translation, it's obviously fully formed. You have there's very, very little massaging about the margins that are available when you're working on books in translation. What's the editorial process like in Norwegian? Do you finish? Are you or do you do the editorial work yourself, and when the publisher sees it, it's really fully formed, or do you? Is that a collaborative effort for you?
It's collaborative, but I mean the novel is fully formed, so it's more or less changing details. I do. I mean, I have like a small, let's call it, team of 5 readers, including my Norwegian editor, and they will have like a meeting before they have a meeting with me. And these are readers who's been with me for a long time. So these are readers that I really trust, and for me, I mean, the way I see it, the readers are always right and the writer is wrong. So there will be, of course, some things that we don't disagree on, but that we agree to disagree on. But for the most part, if they have objections, it's well worth listening to, and it will lead to adjustments 90% of the time. So uh, but then again, I guess I don't know how other writers work or how much they edit their work, but I would guess I'm the kind of writer where there's not that much editing.
Hmm. No, I mean, that certainly makes sense to me, and um, I think yes, the role of the editor is not to really, is obviously not to write the book. It's just to point out the problems they're having, and help you solve them, or give you the tools you need to figure out um, what needs to happen. Turning to the kingdom, I'm interested about the origin of this novel. You know, Snowman, you had the title first. What
Mm.
came first with the kingdom? It's a very different
Brothers.
book for you in a lot of ways, I think.
Mm. I think it was the theme of brothers, of brothers who are close in age and who are uh, well, simply close. I grew up with 2 brothers. One brother was 5 years older than me, so he was sort of not that close when we grew up. But I had one younger brother who was 1 year younger than me, and we, just like the 2 brothers, um, Roy and Carl in the Kingdom, we shared the room and we slept in a bunk bed, and it was so. And also some of the personalities of like in the Kingdom, Roy being 1 year older, being sort of me, uh, is is more dark, is more of a loner, while Carl is the more outgoing extrovert, happy, doing well at school, um, uh, getting friends, um, chasing girls. While Roy is more, he's learning to box. So when they go to the parties in this small mountain town where they grow up, Roy is protecting his younger brother from boys who are angry because Carl is charming their girlfriends. And so it's it's not like their story is.
Dynamic that happened in your family?
No, I was going to say that Edward, it's not like a keyhole that you can look at the relationship of me and my brother. I think that, but what is similar is the sort of the loyalty, the rule that family comes first. It's not even a rule. It's just something that you instinctively know, and also the feeling that as a slightly older brother, you have you have this sort of thing that you can't escape, sort of a um, that you have to protect your brother, and you may hate it. You may think that your brother is stupid, and that he deserves all the beating he can get from the people around him. But you have to be there. You're the older brother. He's your responsibility. You have to sometimes fight his fights for him.
And I should say now to the audience that please, if you have any questions, paste them in the chat. In a minute, we'll get to some questions after Joe and I have had the chance to talk a little more. One of the things you said struck me about this small town. I mean, you've on occasion, midnight sun, blood and snow are rural, but often I feel like your novels take place mostly in an urban setting, often in Oslo. And this is again a very rural town. How does that impact the storytelling? How did you decide on that for this story, and how does that impact what you write about?
I think that is the same as picking a theme of brothers. I want to write about the small towns because my parents grew up in small towns, and so I would spend most of my holidays, summer holidays, and Christmas holidays growing up in these small towns. I think the big difference is that people will know you even if you haven't met them. They will know your background. They will know your parents and your grandparents. uh, they will know your sins and your deeds. And it's some people find comfort or find that safe in a way. Other people find that claustrophobic, that you can't. People will put you in a role that you sort of can't escape. There's always history attached to you, which you can't escape. I mean, living in a city, you can always reinvent yourself with when you meet new people. You can get away with that, and maybe you should get away with that. While going back to this small town, you will always be the guy you were when you grew up there. And this is something that Carl, who in the kingdom is leaving the small town, traveling to the United States, coming back after 15 years, he is still received as the Carl he was when he left. And like I said, that are the pros and cons of growing up in a small village. Some people like to know everybody and that everybody knows them. Some people hate it.
Yeah, and this is very much this village to me. Is Os is very claustrophobic for Roy and Carl, isn't it? I feel like
Mm.
they're both very hemmed in by their environment.
They are. This is, of course, the kingdom is a like in the books in the Harry Hole series. It's quite dark, and this is Carl coming back and meeting Roy again after 15 years, the person in his life that he's closest to. Um, and the parents died when they were in their teens, and Carl is coming back with a big plan to build a luxurious spa hotel in this little small town, which is something very strange and unfamiliar to the people living there. But he is also inviting everybody to invest in these fantastic projects, including Roy, who is by then running the local gas station. And so it is sort of the world outside the village coming to this village. and it's a clash of cultures and way of thinking. But most importantly, it's a project that will also set in motion deep dark secrets from the past now rising to the surface, which has to do with how their parents died, for example, which was seemingly a car accident.
Right. No, and it is a very dark and haunting novel, isn't it? There's a lot simmering below the surface of this small town, not just for the brothers, but for the town as a whole, I think.
Yeah, they are more or less at the brink of extinction, which is true for many small towns in Norway and also in Sweden. People are moving into the cities, and it's mostly boy or young men who stay behind in the villages. All the clever girls will move to the cities, and this is a typical small town in that respect.
Hmm. You know, one of the things I noticed in this was, again, I think more so than your other novels, there's a very strong American connection here. You know, that one of the iconic cars in it is a Cadillac. There is more intersection with American culture. And you know, to me, the setting could as easily have been in say Appalachia as it was in northern Norway. Was that part of your conceit about it initially? How did that come about? Was that deliberate? I mean, do you see what I see in that sense?
As- I think that what you see in small towns in Norway is that you can. I mean, the whole of Norway is very influenced by American culture. It has to do with history. It has to do with the fact that, a big portion of our population emigrated to the United States, which also my grandparents did. My father grew up in Brooklyn, New York, which was and then came back and brought American culture with them, and this happened to many families in Norway. So Norway is a country very influenced by American culture, and especially in the rural areas where you can see houses built inspired by American houses.
Hmm.
The cars, there's big car culture of American cars, and it has also influenced the languages, like the word trunk, which is, you know, it it doesn't really fit into the Norwegian language, but it is there anyway.
Right.
Um, and and so this is not it is, you know, quite normal. But then again, I guess I'm influenced by my close relatives, my family growing up in the United States, and you know, the letters that they would send back to Norway was a literary genre in itself, the American letters.
Mhm.
So there was always the dream of the big world on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean.
Uh, we're actually starting to get some really interesting questions from the audience. So I encourage people to bring those questions on, and maybe I'll toggle to a few of those, Joe. One reader or one of our viewers asked, "How does writing a standalone story differ from writing a series installment? And do you prefer one over the other?"
Um, I like both, but it's of course when you write a series, you have to take into account what has happened and your ideas for what is going to happen. Um, in standalone stories, I normally write in a first person narrative. I think that is the biggest difference.
Hmm.
When you write in the first person narrative, um, you have at least I stay with that point of view, so it's only told from the first person narrative's point of view, so you get less information. Um, and but you have the inner monologue. um, you can of course have that in the third person narrative too, but it's easier to use humor, for example. I feel in a first person narrative like in my standalones. I did that in the Headhunters, which was my first standalone.
Very
And
dark but humorous. Yes.
yeah. But it's so it's different. You can no, but I mean both the Harry Hole series and these standalones, they have their you know their possibilities of telling a story. But I think that um, yeah, I like them both.
Right, and it makes sense. Police procedurals are generally third person, and you're privy to information as it's discovered, and crime stories are often first person, and there's a very limited amount of information. Is the narrator reliable, and you don't know what's happening outside of their immediate experience, which does make for a different storytelling style, doesn't it?
Mm. Yeah, I think so. I think in many ways it's easier to write in the first person narrative because uh, you can imagine everything. It's like um, it's like you're living within your own story. So in that respect, it's easier. It's easier to find an atmosphere as soon as you have found a voice, a way of talking and thinking for your main character. Then very much is done. It's in a third person. You have to sort of conduct a symphony orchestra. You have to be on top of everything, and you have to be able to change the tone of the novel when you change characters, which is sometimes very difficult. You tend to, I see many writers, perhaps including myself, we tend, for example, to have this, or most of the characters having the same sense of humor, or like other crime writers. I see they have, if they are interested in cars, then suddenly most of the characters seems to be interested in cars and what music on the radio channels they are listening to.
So you try not to do that, not to
Well,
carry.
yeah, well, it's not like it's not like it's a mortal sin to let your own preferences in popular culture carry on into your characters. But it can, if exaggerated, it can damage the illusion of you describing a real world.
Hmm. Here's one that I particularly like. What are you most excited for readers to discover in the kingdom that differs from your other novels?
Hmm. Um, I always, I always find it's a good question, but always find that question difficult to answer, because it's not always clear to myself um, what I want to tell. It's more like when I come up with an idea for a story, I have more question marks than answers. This is going to be about this. It's more like, why do I like this idea so much? What is it that I find fascinating? What is it? Why am I so interested in this story? And what is it that I need to tell? And even by the end of the story, I'm not always sure what I've been telling and why I've been telling that kind of story. Sometimes actually it's when I get translated, I will travel abroad and answer questions about my novel, a novel that I wrote 5 or 6 years ago when it was published in Norway. Now, this is not the case with the Kingdom, since it's published simultaneously in Norway and United States. But that is often when I realize what the novel was about,
Oh,
and
interesting.
more often than not, it's about my own life, what's been going on in my own life. Um, some of the novels are definitely about father-son relationships, but I do think that the Kingdom is somewhat clear for me. It's about family versus society. It's about loyalty. Um, it's about you know uh, what does morality, um, how does that count uh, compared to loyalty toward your family, right?
Mm,
Mm.
right. Um, Here's a question I find particularly interesting, and I may even take a step back. The question is there anything you wish you would have known about crime writing before you started? But I would say also, let's take a meta step back and say, why crime writing? Why
Mm.
did you pick crime writing as your general form? And then, and what do you wish you'd known when you first started writing the Bats, say?
Mm. Actually, it's I was this was back in 1997. I was going to Australia after I had a very tough year, where I was keeping my job as a stockbroker at the time while playing with my band who just had a breakthrough. So we did like 180 gigs that year, and while I was having a day job, um, and so I was more or less burnt out. So I was going to Australia, and I had been asked by a girl who worked at the publishing house because she liked the lyrics of the band, and she said, "Can you write something for us? Maybe a book about the band." And I said, I can't do that, but maybe I'll come back with something else for you. And I was taking a break from the band and from my job. I had 2 months in which I could do anything I liked. So I went to Australia and I brought a laptop. And I knew that, okay, so I probably been thinking about writing a novel for many years, and this was my chance. So I had like 5 weeks in which to write a novel, and I figured that um, that will have to be a crime novel, not because I'm particularly interested in crime fiction. I mean, I had Jim Thompson was my favorite crime writer, but
Mm.
I didn't particularly. I wasn't that much into to crime fiction. I was into to literature, but anyway, it's so it was the easy way out. It was just practical thinking. I want to write something that I can present to a publishing house, and hopefully they will say that yes, we won't publish this, but we see some talent here. Can you please send us something else? um, that was sort of my idea. So I was a bit shocked when they said they wanted to publish it, but that was why I started with crime fiction. But what I discovered, I mean, at the time it wasn't like I had never written anything before, because I've been writing the lyrics for my band for many years. I've written some short stories, but it was my first attempt at a novel. But what I found out was that you have this in a who's done it story, you have this almost intimate um, interaction with your reader. So you sort of have a license to manipulate them in your writing, and I kind of like that knowing that, okay, now we have established the rules of the game, which means that they will have to carefully read every word because there will be hidden clues to what is the solution. And I like that. I just so then I realized when I was writing my second novel that, okay, so this will be a crime novel too. Since then, I've written not only crime fiction. I mean, I've written children's books and short stories. Um, and even journalistic work. But I come back to the crime novel. That is, I guess, that is where my heart is.
So you didn't know initially that Harry Hole was going to come back for more books when you,
Definitely not. No, I didn't think it would get published.
right? He's a
And I
perfect
didn't.
character. Yeah.
No, I didn't plan him as a. I didn't plan him as a series.
Yeah. Interesting. You said something that I wanted to just follow up on. You said 5 weeks. Did you really write the Bat in only 5 weeks?
The first version I did write in 5 weeks. Now of course when the publishing house asked me, how long did this take you, I said a year and a half,
Mhm.
uh,
Right.
just to make sure that they thought
You were
I
serious.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I did rewrite it, not completely. I think It's probably 75% we kept, but I did probably edit more in that novel than in other novels.
Now, I remember when you first started talking about this book, it had a different title, which was an homage to Jim Thompson, correct? Is my memory correct about that?
Not a foreword, but what it called sort of a
Okay.
couple of lines before before the text start, which is pays a tribute. So I quote. I'm quoting Frank Miller from his Batman series. Um, but it's right. I'm a Jim Thompson fan. But the title was the Batman, which is based on a Australian legend. But DC Comics wouldn't let me use that title at least not in English. But I would say that this the Kingdom is probably more a tribute to Jim Thompson in a way. I was thinking about calling the novel Population 1280, which would definitely be a homage to Jim Thompson's novel by the same name. But they
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have let me. So
Actually, you can't copyright titles, so if you ever want to do that, you can. But
you can, yeah, that's good to know. Hmm.
um, one reader says your characters are so complicated. Good guys who do bad things, or bad guys who do what they do for a good reason, loyalty, love, etc. What draws you to this type of character, and what do you want readers to take away from these unique heroes?
Hmm. I think that it's for me. I guess if there is like a recurring theme in my books, it's about morality and moral dilemmas, and sort of trying to make the reader accept unacceptable acts of violence or I wouldn't say cruelty, but deeds that would be characterized as crimes, I guess,
Hmm.
and try to understand it, but maybe not accept it, but try to understand it and understand that this is part of the human condition, that we all have that capability of cruelty and of being criminals. Uh, there's a famous Norwegian social anthropologist says that crime doesn't exist. What he means by that is that um, crime is defined by what a certain society um, will see as unsocial, asocial acts at a certain point in time, which means that a, um, a person who is a criminal in one point in time in a certain society can be a pillar of society in another society in another uh, point in time, which is a typical example being the psychopath being very important in wartime and will spend time in jail in peacetime.
Right, right. Um, actually, you mentioned this Norwegian sociologist. One viewer is asking, do you think Norwegian authors share a particular noir tone, or is it just perhaps the ones which are popular with American readers? Speak a little bit to where you fit into the larger Norwegian body of literature.
It's it, it's hard for me to tell and to reflect on that because it's probably easier to see from the outside. But I probably think that um, I mean, being a Norwegian, having grown up with Norwegian culture and Norwegian literature, I have one foot in the Scandinavian crime fiction tradition of Sjöwall and Wahlöö, who started the two Swedish writers who started the trend of um, political crime novels in the 70s and who immensely influenced the crime fiction scene in Scandinavia. Um, I probably have that that one foot in that traditional social realism and criticism of society. But I think I'm even more influenced by my father's favorite writers and American culture and the American hard-boiled detective novel from the 50s and 60s and even later. Writers like I mentioned Jim Thompson, but also Lawrence Block and a lot of other American writers.
So those were the books around your household when you were growing up?
Yeah, definitely. My mother was a librarian, and my father was a keen reader, so there were always a lot of books around.
Somebody who has not only read it but read it closely notices that ornithology plays a central role in the kingdom.
Mm.
What did you and what inspired you? Did you know you were integrating birds into this more than normal, and what inspired you to do so?
No, um, that's that's more typical of what happens when you start writing. And I started writing about this one particular bird that is a it's and this is the bird's name in Norwegian is Hailu, and it has this really sad song. It's just one note, but it has sort of a blue note. It sounds like a Norwegian sad folk song, and it's a loner, and it will follow um, lonely people. You know, if you go walking, hiking in the mountains, it will follow you from a distance, and it'll be
Mm.
your friend, but it won't come close. So it's like it's a symbol of a person who is lonely, but who can't deal with getting too close to bonding with people. So I think that it became a very interesting uh, mirror image of the main character Roy.
Mm. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. That does fit his character, doesn't it?
Mm.
A couple of audience members are curious for you to dig a little more deeply into something we've discussed a little before, and that is how much of yourself do you see in your characters when it comes to Kingdom, Roy or Carl? And is it intentional, or does it just
Yeah,
by
I think I
writing?
think it just happens, and it's hard to tell. It's like, I mean, I try to put a little of myself into all my characters. I think that as a writer, you have to work a little bit like an actor. That I mean, if you are writing about the psychopath, you have to sort of find your inner psychopath and enlarge in that and use that. And so but I mean, I can see myself in Roy, probably more in Roy than in Carl, but I can see some of myself in Carl also. The two brothers being very different, but I mean, uh, I can I can see I can see both their motives and what drives them. Um, of course, Harry Hole, having written about Harry Hole for now, I don't know, 20 years, there's probably more of myself in Harry Hole than in any other of my other characters, but none of them are my alter egos, to put it that way.
And one viewer was interested in what's next for our surly friend Harry Hole. Do you have plans for him in the near future? Do you know what?
He'll be back, but right now I'm working on two collections of short stories. One with um, crime stories, and another collection with science fiction stories.
Excellent. Well, we will look forward to that. And one viewer is interested. Uh, Love the Snowman. Are there any of your works in the process of being made into movies or TV series? Is there more coming on the big screen or small screen from Joe?
Mm. Well, right now there's always some projects that are in some at some stage of development. Right now, HBO has ordered a series from the director Denis Villeneuve with Jake Gyllenhaal and Jonathan Nolan, who wrote The Westworld. So that's exciting. It's a mini series based on the standalone The Sun, which
Hmm.
was published some years ago. So and there's also some other projects, but yes, there's a short story I wrote, London, which hasn't been published yet. That will be in the collection of short stories. Um, Ben Stiller is attached to direct that, which is also really exciting. So we'll see.
Some good stuff in the works.
Mm.
Um, a couple of readers have actually asked, how do you feel about collaborating with other crime writers? And is there someone you could see Harry Hola joining up with, some other series character?
No, I have to say I'm not a particular fan of mixing parallel universes like that, and well, not everybody, of course, but some of the collaboration I've seen seem to be for more commercial motivated than for the quality of the storytelling. So, I mean, if I see a chance that it would be a more interesting story if I collaborated, I I would. But for the case of drawing more attention to the stories, I think I prefer more to work on my own. Yes.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. So we're here just talking to Jo Nesbø about his new book, The Kingdom, an absolutely fabulous, chilling novel about two brothers living in a small town. Um, and I think, do you have anything else you want to tell our audience about The Kingdom, or any news from your side of the world, Joe?
There's actually no news. There's nothing happening in Norway right now. It's just a
Or
standstill.
nothing good, that is, right?
Yes, and everybody is just watching, the number of infected people, and that is also more or less flat. And there's no presidential elections here or anything. So here is very quiet.
Right, right.
Um,
Well,
mm.
good. Well, thank you for joining us, Joe. And again, I want to thank BNN for hosting. I hope you all will go out and buy his book. Buy it from BNN. And we appreciate your tuning in today to listen to us chat.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe. Have a good day or a good
Yeah,
night.
you too, Edward.